all. Bills can win it here. White puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
Jacksonville's perfect record on the line right here.
They put in Williams as the fullback, and he scores a touchdown, the 12th year defensive tackle.
And the fans are all over the field. Incredible. This place is pandemonium.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies. Not going to do a long-winded, funny intro on this one, naming a bunch of things and people and pronouns and things like that, because Greg and I are all business tonight on this episode of Disguised Coverage. And as I mentioned very quickly there, I am not alone on this episode of Disguised Coverage. If you're watching the video, you will see I am joined by Greg Tompsett from the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
Good. Things are good. And I love talking cap, and I love talking salary cap with other people who care about the salary cap. Aaron kind of pretends and plays along as though he's like, oh yeah, that's cute, and lets me ramble about things. I'm pumped to talk about it with somebody who gets as nerdy as I do.
Yep, I'm a big fan of it. And to put things in perspective, I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in the cap, but Greg is the resident capologist here at Cover One. And to put it in terms, if we were a law firm, I think Greg would be one of the name partners in capology. And I'd be one of the junior partners that's on his way up and it's about to be named partner when it comes to capology. And seeing as how the salary cap is a myth, this episode will probably take, a minute and a half, 2 minutes?
I think that makes sense. It's I'll break into my normal spiel here. So obviously people throw that out all the time. And honestly, I kind of get why people start to think that, because every team that gets backed into a corner all of a sudden
gets out of
they make their way out of it. It's a myth. It's not even real. Teams that, hey, the Saints are in a disaster and they extended Alvin Kamara. How can this even be real? So I always use the analogy. We all know the friends in college who had the really nice apartment and the nice car and picked up the tab at the bar and everything. And always you're like, where is this coming from? It was credit cards. They didn't have money. Mm-hmm. And those credit card bills become due. And sometimes you could roll it over and get a, interest-free loan and do debt consolidation, or you could take out a loan to cover it. Or sometimes you get a really good job and kind of get bailed out and start making enough money that you can pay it off. And sometimes you have to declare bankruptcy. And I think I use that analogy because I think people want the NFL version of, I want there to be repercussions to be the extent of, well, in order for me to see that it was a penalty for my friend in college, I need him to be homeless, living on the street, selling his body for crack. And it's not, those aren't the only two options. When there are repercussions, that can mean entire seasons where you can't add any material players, or where you have to let players walk to sign with other teams. And that all those different things come along that, there are repercussions. It doesn't mean that the franchise folds or they literally can't form a team. Although we're going to see how the Saints figure this out. I'm a little curious. If I was a Saints fan, I'd have a lot of questions. They're $100 million over the salary cap.
Yeah,
and I've played around with their spot track. It's going to be 3 dudes and 40 undrafted free agents. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. But anyways, when people say the cap is a myth, what they really mean is the cap is way more flexible than people realize and that most fans realize. And we're now shifting from a phase where we had plenty of cap money and usually needed to, overpay the Mario Williams of the world to come please take our money, to now shifting to a phase where we're going to be the team that teams complain about, or other fans complain about, that, hey, how did they just extend 3 different guys? They don't have any cap space. Where are they pulling this money from? Now we're going to get those creative cap gymnastics, and we're going to talk about that tonight.
That's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. The releases, the pay cuts, the extensions, different things that you can do to be creative and create some flexibility, create some wiggle room. But exactly to Greg's point, eventually those bills, no pun intended, come due with what you're doing. If you're signing extensions now and doing restructures now, and it frees up cap space for 2021, that's fantastic. But then you will incur more costs in 2022 or 2023 and so on and so forth. It's not like that money just disappears. And there are ramifications and chain reactions and repercussions, and it all starts with that salary cap. And this year in 2021, as we jump right into it, bringing up our first segment here with the salary cap and our options. So each year's salary cap is based on revenue projections for the following season. And obviously we had a COVID year in 2020, and that changed fan attendance and what teams were able to generate in the arenas and monetary value and all those things. And as such, we've come into this year with a much lower salary cap than anticipated. So the salary cap in 2020, the season that just passed, was $198.2 million. Projections were originally, as we entered 2021, that the salary cap floor would be $175 million. Now it's looking more like it could be around 180, with potential projections of ending up at 185 to 188.
Yeah, so we've seen different things around there, and I mean, there was some fear at one point that if they didn't set a floor, this could get really, really ugly. Yeah. Luckily, neither the owners nor the NFLPA have any interest in that. There are teams that couldn't, if you went much lower, the Falcons, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Saints, you would get closer to, there is an equation where if the bar got to a certain point, you literally couldn't field the team. So no one has an interest in that. No one wants, like actual craziness to happen.
I wouldn't mind if that happened to the Cowboys.
Well, don't get me wrong. There are people who would vote for it. Not enough that the vote would pass. Right now, what we're seeing is there was a rumor for a while, and not that I'm a sources guy, but I know a couple people. I was told at one point that it looks like it's 180. And then all of a sudden this week, that's creeped up a little bit. Now I've heard a handful of people that I respect say 185 to 188. And the biggest indicator for me is Mike and the team over at Spot Track has actually formally changed their projection to 185. So I am going to move forward up until March 15th, assuming it's 185, knowing it could be as low as 180. It could be as high as 188. That's the range everyone should plan for. I'm going to do my math as though things are 185. And if it changes, we'll adjust for that.
Correct. And I'm glad you mentioned Spot Track. That is the source that both Greg and I use. They are the best in the business when it comes to market value and projections and contract accuracy. They are the contract equivalent of Vegas as far as betting odds go. They are the trusted source. And them pegging that cap at around 185, and any amount that it can go up is helpful to us. The original pre-pandemic salary cap we were looking at for 2021 was $210 million.
Yeah, 210 to even 215. It could start going up by slightly larger clips. I know Bean commented on that. Most people projected 210 to 215.
So that's a massive. You're looking at a 20 to 30, depending on how high it goes or how low the original projections were, so on and so forth. You're looking anywhere from a $20 to $30 million difference. And what the Bills find themselves in terms of their salary cap, as a lot of other teams do, but they're a little better off than some, like the Saints and the Eagles. They find themselves now being in a salary cap position where everything that they had done up to this point, they were planning on, okay, the salary cap should go up incrementally, and looking at 2021, we should be somewhere around 210, 215. So when we're signing people in 2019 and 2020, the thought is, okay, we continue to build, this is how much space we'll have, and all of a sudden now that bar has been lowered, and you're sitting with contracts, and you're sitting with players, and everyone and anyone becomes someone that you have to look at and potentially evaluate, because every dollar counts. And if you're spending X amount of dollars on someone and they're not worth it, as we're going to get into in a bit with some players, you have to start looking at options like restructures or releases or pay cuts or extensions. And then you're calculating dead cap and what does it look like for a pre-June 1st cut versus a post-June 1st cut? How much money can we save? All these mental gymnastics and all these numbers. But I guess before we get into the players, Greg, why don't you start us with where the Bills are currently in terms of where they sit with their players under contract, how much money, how much room do we have right now, and then we'll go from there.
So again, assuming that the baseline's 185, the Bills are rolling over 3.7 and change, 3.771955. So $3.7 million, and that's the amount we're rolling over. So we're going to start with a baseline of 188.77 million. With the contracts the Bills currently have underway, it counts 54. You have to realize that a handful of those are the Nate Beckers and the Brandon Bryants and the Tanner Gentrys, which they carry over as though you're going to be at a full contract value. So, there's a lot of noise in there. There's actually, if you really want to play with it, and Spotrac actually has a manage roster tool you can play with where you can go in and pretend you're Brandon Beane and you're cutting guys and restructuring guys and taking pay cuts and stuff. And I do that more than any normal adult should. There's a lot of small ones at the bottom that you can actually play with that aren't going to be there. And when you take Jordan Devy's $990,000 and compare it to an actual 6th round pick that probably replaces him, that's an extra $300,000. And there's a bunch of those little ones there. So just, we're not going to go through that level of granular detail here.
That'd be crazy if we did line by line.
The bad news is with that 188.7 million, we have 184.3 million in active contracts. So the cap that we have already counts at that level. And when you get into for the offseason, until you get right up to the day of the season, they use a rule called the top 51, where you count the top 51 contracts, and you'll see sites like Spotrac or Over the Cap does a nice job as well. You'll see the bottom ones below, they're kind of lined out. So it doesn't count the total. It just counts, hey, what are your top 51 contracts? And that's at 184.3. So no matter how you slice it, there's not a lot of extra space here. We're looking at about $3.8 million in cap space before we get into any other gymnastics.
Correct. So that's where we sit right now based on that 185 salary cap, which is what we're going to go and assume off of for this episode. So we're sitting there with a 3.8 and 3.869343 if anybody cares or wants to be super particular or specific, which we like to do here. Every once in a while. And so with that, start looking at players, start looking at the roster.
You and I deal with this a lot on Twitter. People assume there are two options of what you can do.
That's true.
And then it's just, you can cut people. And that, look at this. I looked at what the dead cap is and what a salary is. And if I cut them, I get this amount of money. And don't get me wrong, I think it's naive to assume that no Buffalo Bills get cut. We are going to see that. In theory, EJ Gaines already did. We've already seen one player released. We are going to see more releases. I don't think it's as many as people talk about. So a lot of the guys we're going to run through tonight, we're going to give the number if they're released, and also some other things. So there's a couple more options. We saw last year, pay cuts are a real thing. Brandon Beane is comfortable having difficult discussions with team favorite players. Last year he got Tyler Kroft and Patrick DeMarco and Star Lotulelei to all give just straight up pay cuts. They were not so we'll talk about another option in a minute with restructuring. They were just directly pay cuts. There was no benefit to the player. It was just simply, we're going to need you to take less money or else we're going to have to release you. Hey, tough luck. This is just how it works. If you want to keep your roster spot, this is what we need. And the alternative is, or we'll have to release you and we'll go that route. So he's very comfortable doing that. We saw it with multiple players last year. There are team-friendly extensions. We have a handful of players that are coming up on their final year of their contract. So we have guys who only have the 2021 season left. We're going to talk through some of them, where if we know we want them back in 2022, you can kind of backload a little bit of that money from a cap standpoint by converting some of their contract here into a signing bonus, giving them a 1-year contract at a reasonable number they would have agreed to anyways, and then splitting that salary halfway between this year and halfway between last year. That's also the way that team-friendly extensions or that restructuring works. Uh-huh. So that's the one we hear about other teams all the time. But where did they find this money? The Rams are actually really sneaky about it. They purposely set up a ton of their team's contracts with huge salary numbers. So if they need it, they can go to that player and say, hey, How would you like us to just cut you a check for $15 million today rather than making it $1 million a week during the season as game checks? Can we just cut you a check for $15 million here in April? And the players normally say, why, yes, I would love for you to cut me a check for $15 million here in April. I would love to do that.
So much.
Depending on how many years are left on the contract, you can then spread that money out. So when you convert a base salary, and we'll use a super simple one, if a player has a $15 million salary and there's 5 years left on his deal, you can convert that, switch it down to the minimum, and take those $15 million and spread them out $3 million a year over the next 5 years. All of a sudden this year, it's the $1 million base salary and the $3 million prorated number. He only counts $4 million against the cap this year, and you spread that out. The player gets the same amount of money. You are adding $3 million per year to the rest of the years, but that's kind of banking on that TV deal money and future cap increases. So some of those players are going to be open to that, and we have a few of those as well. So those are the 4 tools Brandon Beane has in his tool belt to create cap space. And anytime that comes up with a player, it's always healthy. And there's one very popular name that I'm going to show. The cap space created by the restructuring is almost equal to the cap space by the cut, and then we get to keep the player. So there's a handful of things that we're going to look at as we go through there. So keep that in mind when you hear people on Twitter throw around, why don't we just cut this guy? There's options beyond that you can play with to still create cap space.
Correct. That's a very great point, and the breakdown. But, I mean, I expected that. You're the other resident capologist. It makes sense. And that restructure for me is the biggest one. You know, you're taking the player's base salary and reducing it down, and then that difference is paid to the player as a signing bonus, and you're prorating it throughout the rest of the deal. That is a large one. That's one that we're going to potentially look at as we go through several players on the Bills. When we talk about that restructure option, that is something we want you guys to keep in your brain. When we say restructure, that means you're taking that base salary, you are reducing it down, taking the difference and paying it to the player's signing bonus, and then prorating it over the rest of the lifespan of the contract. So again, now there's less of a hit, and then in the future you're still going to have to pay for it, and maybe it increases the money you have to pay in the future. But again, as the cap ideally continues to go back up, you're still in a fine situation. Percentage-wise, you're okay. So that is a big thing. And I guess since we led there a little bit with some restructures, let's start with someone who has a potential restructure or extension option, and that person is wide receiver John Brown, who currently sits with the Bills. And if you're looking at the spot track table, which we like to, he has the 6th largest cap hit for the Buffalo Bills in 2021 at $9.531 million. That's roughly 5.33% of the money that we're paying towards our cap. He has a dead cap hit of 1.6, both pre and post June 1st. We know he played in only 12 games this year. He was banged up in several others that he played. He just didn't seem to have that same effectiveness. And for as big of a leap as he took in 2019, obviously the production that he had in 2020 isn't what we had hoped for or anticipated. But again, injuries are going to play a large part in that. But as such, you look at that cap hit and being in the top 10, being in the top 6, and then seeing the on-field production and value, that money may not warrant that level of production. So we start with John Brown, and let's delve into his contract and what we can do and what our options are.
So John Brown is one of the toughest ones. He's obviously one of the most frequently assumed cuts. So if we cut him, we get almost $8 million. It's 7.95 and change. So we'll call it around $8 million. He doesn't have any years left on the deal. The 2021 season is the final year of his contract. So there is no restructuring to be done because you can't kick any money into the future. You could negotiate a direct pay cut where, in this, I'm not going to go through this in every single player, but Beane is basically going to give this same spiel to all the agents. Hey, we love your guy. You know we want him here. We don't want you to go have to face this nuclear winner out in free agency and kick around and not have any interest either. We'd love to keep you here. How about we come back at a number that fits both of us? It's as much or, as good as you're going to get on the open market, but why don't we get you back here at that number, and then we don't have to worry about any of this release nonsense.
That's a big point. I'm sorry to interrupt you. With John Brown in particular, so one, that nuclear winner in terms of free agency is going to be tough for anyone, but especially the wide receivers that are available this offseason, there is a lot of quality. So John Brown is someone who doesn't have a lot of leverage when it comes to whatever, fine, I'll leave and go test the open market. That might not be something that he wants to do at all. My apologies. Please continue.
No, it's a very good point. And that's, believe me, that's where the pro personnel team comes in, where Dan Morgan's going to give, he's going to give Brandon Beane that ammo to come in and be like, hey, do you see the other top 15 guys that are available? Do you want to compete against that when our projections are 8 teams are ready to give big money to a receiver? Are you hoping you're just in the lucky half? So there, in my mind, there are 3 realistic options for John Brown. One is just straight release. We take the $8 million and we hope that Gabe Davis, Isaiah Hodgins, and maybe another draft pick replace his production. Uh-huh. There is a direct pay cut, keeping his number in 2021, but saying, hey, instead of $9.6 million, what if you give us 4 of that back? We keep you at around $5 million. We get a $4 million benefit in space. We think $5 million is probably pretty fair to what you're going to get on the open market. What if we do that? The one factor that we don't have info on, but the team and their doctors do, is how short-term were those health issues. If they think that those health issues were a blip and he's ready for more, they could also, the third option is a team-friendly extension, where say you only add $2 million on to the 2022 season, but you kick some of that money over, and that we all of a sudden make it a 2-year, $10 million deal instead of a 1-year, $8 million deal, and say, hey, we like you. We want to keep you here. We think you're about a $5 million receiver now, but we also think you're a $5 million receiver worth 2 seasons. Why don't we kick a little bit of that into the future? We're going to give you a chunk of that money as a signing bonus now and convert a big chunk of what you're doing here and kick a little bit of that extra into the next year. And we're going to do it at $3 million cap hit in 2021 and a $7 million cap hit in 2022, so that we actually get $5 million in cap space back. So those are the 3 options. I will be shocked if John Brown stays on this roster at the current cap number, but I don't think it is automatic that he gets released, is what some fans assume.
That's a beautiful, beautiful point there at the end to wrap it up. And I second that notion. I don't think there is a chance that John Brown stays on this team and stays with a 9.531 cap hit on this roster in 2021. It's just not going to be there with the money we have available and what we need to do on the rest of this team. The injury piece that you mentioned is such a key part for me, because I like John Brown, and when healthy, I think he's a terrific complement for the offense. I like what he does, and as confident as I am in Gabriel Davis, I don't want to make that assumption that, like, okay, this second-year receiver is ready to just assume the mantle and jump into a higher volume role and see more snaps and deliver regularly. I like what John Brown offers, but I want to see what your take is on this as well. I like the option. For me, releasing him is the last-ditch effort. I would like to extend. I would like to restructure with him as much as possible, play ball with him as much as we can. He's a good team guy. He fits in well with what we do. He's got a good rapport with Josh. And that injury piece is what really is going to do it for me. Because if it's some things where, no, it was a couple blips on the radar, he'll be fine. But if it's something that we think will trend, then I want to see that contract either reflect that injury aspect in terms of being a lower value or having more bonuses worked in terms of playability and snaps and production.
100%.
Or, as terrible as it sounds, then I would push for more of the release because of the money we save and the fact that he may not be able to deliver what you're needing or expecting from him. But what would you like to see?
So he has the least leverage of any of the candidates we're going to see here. And there's 2 things that play into that. One, he has one of the lowest dead cap hits of any of the guys that we're going to discuss tonight, with the highest salary. So it's $8 million savings is the highest of any player that we can go after here. He is the highest potential savings on the entire roster.
Yes.
You combine that with, we just had 2 draft picks at receiver, one of which far exceeded his draft slot, and Gabe Davis showed a very high potential for future production, and another one that some people liked more than him coming out out of the draft, and some people had Isaiah Hodgins rated higher than
I
Gabe
love
Davis.
Isaiah Hodgins so much.
It's a really rough spot for John Brown. That I think the health is the factor. We're not going to know the answer to that. If the team feels like he can come back, they'll offer that. if they're worried that these are now just the nagging issues of a 31-year-old receiver that aren't going to get better, the release is in play. So I don't think it's as automatic as some people assume. It is absolutely in play and an option.
Yeah, big time, especially with a receiver who's a lot of his game is predicated on that speed and his wheels being healthy and greased up. And if his wheels are a little rickety, that's a tough thing for someone of that nature. We're going to stick on the offensive side of the ball and move into someone who made some noise last night. Yeah. Some people reported that Lee Smith, tight end extraordinaire for the Buffalo Bills, massive receiving threat that is Lee Smith, huge, always going downfield, just high points the ball tremendously. He spoke in an interview, I believe on Nashville radio, something like that, and it was incorrectly reported that he was retiring, but it ended up being that he was considering it. He was thinking about, shutting it down. But let's talk some Lee Smith, and his most likely option, as terrible as it is to say, is looking like a straight-up release.
So a couple things just on the semantics of it. You guys saw this when the terrible news came on Eric Wood. In the NFL, there is no designation for retire. Retire is not a thing. If somebody's under contract, you have to release them. A player can't retire and do some gracious benefit to the team to give money back. Oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't work that way. Retire equals release. Now, the fortunate part is Lee Smith has no dead cap, so when he retires and or gets released, it's just $2.25 million in savings. He's obviously a locker room favorite. He is a leader on the roster. You hear so many guys talk about him and the benefit he has in that locker room. Yeah. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Whether it's on his terms or the team's terms, I think that very much Brandon Beane will talk to his agent and say, hey, the writing's on the wall anyways. Encourage Lee to do it on his terms, and we're certainly happy to wish him well and congratulate him on his well-deserved retirement, and everybody moves forward happy.
Fair enough. Yeah, I kind of see that, whether it's exactly how you put it, whether it's on his terms or we force that hand a little bit. I would expect him to not be on this roster, and I would expect an extra $2.25 million to be in our bank account so we can spend those Pagula bucks on someone like Kenny Galladay. No, I'm just kidding. That won't happen. And moving on from Lee Smith, we're going to jump a little bit to the defensive side of the ball here. And Quentin Jefferson, brought in from Seattle last year, someone whose versatility was extremely intriguing, the multiple techniques he could line up in the defensive line and in the formation, and with how McDermott loves to rotate his front four and how important those front four are. We saw Quentin Jefferson, a lot of us, myself included, as being an amazing signing last year and somebody who could really help impact this defensive line. We did not necessarily see that from him in 2019. And when we're looking towards 2021, he has the 8th largest cap hit on the team at $8 million. That's roughly 4.47%. He has a dead cap hit of $1.5 million, both pre and post June 1st, so it's the same regardless. And in 2020, he was 4th on the team in pressures with 30. He saw the 11th most snaps on the defense, 4th most snaps amongst defensive linemen. He had 3 sacks, 19 tackles, 14 stops. He was 12th on the Bills in terms of pass rush grade, 26th on the Bills in terms of run defense grade. And exactly, that face says a lot of it that you just made there. He does offer that versatility, but we just did not see the level of production. And I know Sal Capaccio has talked about it. I know a lot of people talked about it. The COVID offseason, new players coming in, it's hard to necessarily get acclimated and get ingrained into the team and, fill the role that you need to fill right away. But that being said, I think he flashed at times and he had some big plays, but we did not see that value. And now as we look towards 2021, he's someone that is a high potential candidate in terms of either a pay cut or a release. But either way, something's got to be done with him.
Yeah, there's no chance he stays at the current number. There's a chance that I think maybe besides Ed Oliver, he was asked to play out of position as much as any defensive lineman on the team.
Very true.
There's a chance that a pay cut is worth it with him because there's still some value left there. This is his last year on the deal. There's no restructuring option. I don't think he's done anything. He doesn't have any of the kind of cachet or money in the bank that a John Brown does to say, hey, okay, maybe we want him back again. There isn't any of that here that you're going to extend him. I do think that there's a chance that they go to him and be like, hey, we don't think you're going to get more than $4 million on the open market. If you go out there, what if you give us $4 million of that back? We'll cut you down to $4 million from $8 million. We get the $4 million back in cap space. You stay on a reasonable deal. And we hope now with Star Lotulelei back and getting our line back into the way it is that you can go to the defensive end rotational 3 tech that we intended you to be, not trying to play out a position as a 1 tech and then also getting some snaps elsewhere. So I do think it's very possible he gets released and the $6.5 million in cap space is simply realized. But I think there's a chance they could bring him back here, maybe more so than the next gentleman we'll talk about.
That's fair. And it's a beautiful segue. I like what you did there. The next gentleman that we're going to talk about is Mr. Vernon Butler. Came to the Bills in that 2020 offseason defensive line upgrade. And he comes into 2021 with the 10th largest cap hit of all Buffalo Bills players at $7.818 million, roughly 4.37%. He has a dead cap hit of $1 million. However, he is one of the outliers here. His post-June 1st dead cap hit bumps up to $3.5 million. So he's someone that we would see moves on sooner rather than later. He was 9th on the team in pressures with 18. He had the 13th most snaps among defenders, 5th most amongst defensive linemen, no sacks, 11 tackles, 10 stops. He had the 22nd best pass rush grade amongst all Bills defenders, the 16th best run defense grade. He flashed down the stretch. He had a couple big plays against San Francisco. He had a nice blow up of a guard in the game against Pittsburgh on prime time. Again, he did some nice things down the stretch, but another person whose value, I don't want to say value, whose on-field production in 2020 did not match the monetary value that he was accruing off the field. And as we come into 2021, again, someone that must be assessed, and as a lot of people are blowing up the chat already, Butler gone. We see a pretty realistic option of him being released given the $6.8 million it would save.
So there's a couple factors in play here. The reason that you see his dead cap number increase later is he has 2 factors coming up here that are significant. He has a $1 million roster bonus due on March 21st. On that same day, March 21st, $1.5 million of his salary additionally becomes guaranteed. With the return of Star Lotulelei, I think Vernon Butler is the most obvious cut here. If they hesitate or wait on him, it's $2.5 million additional money that they'll owe. That's crazy. There's no chance that they're going to do that. He's the one that I think there's I suppose it's feasible he could renegotiate those numbers and they could do a restructuring of some kind with a pay cut. So I guess it's not impossible, but he doesn't offer the versatility that Jefferson does with Star coming back, and that Butler had some moments. He had a stretch there maybe in the 3rd quarter of the season, from whatever you want to call that, game 9 to 12, that range, that he had some moments where I was like, hey, maybe we found something here. But then he faded down the stretch again, and I wasn't terribly impressed with him through the playoffs. I think he's one of the easiest ones, and that $6.8 million goes a long ways towards some of the guys we'll talk about later in the show.
Big time. That's a significant amount. That's 6.8, and you hit it right on the head. The hat that he wears, its value and the uniqueness that it has to him, it lessens with the return of Star Lotulelei. And he does not have the versatility up front that Quentin Jefferson has. So someone that you would be like, okay, let's see if we can play ball with Quentin Jefferson a little bit because of what he can do up front. Butler does not offer that same type of versatility and that same type of gamesmanship and maneuverability up front. And we'll stick with the theme of defensive linemen that were added in the 2020 offseason and move on to Mario Addison, who is another hot button topic for a lot of Bills fans who are immediately just like, cut him, he's terrible, throw him into Lake Erie. Mario Addison, this one's a high one, top 5 in terms of largest 2021 cap hit. He has the 5th largest cap hit in 2021 at $10.162 million. That is a 5.68% hit. That is very large. He has a dead cap hit of $4 million, but a post-June 1st cap hit of $2 million. So it goes lower. He was second on the team in pressures with 45 in 2020. Jerry Hughes, for reference, was first with 66. So he had 21 less pressures than Jerry Hughes. He had the 7th most snaps amongst all Bills defenders, the 2nd most snaps amongst all Bills defensive linemen. He finished with 7 sacks, 28 tackles, 23 stops. He was tied for 13th on the team in pass rush grade, 25th on the team in run defense grade. We saw that a lot through the film and through the All-22 tape as we dug through this year at cover one. We saw his ability to not set the edge. He didn't generate the value that he was accruing, much like Vernon Butler, that he was accruing off the field. And for me, this one was a disappointment. I thought when we signed Mario Addison, I liked what he offered. Yeah. Jerry Hughes, I think he's always underrated, but I thought Mario Addison had a chance to become our best pass rusher. He had double-digit sacks, I think 3 out of the last 4 seasons, coming in between 10 and 12 sacks a year. I thought he could do the same thing. I thought he would have a nice home and a nice fit in McDermott defense, but we just didn't see that value from him. And given how high of a cap hit that he has in 2021, what are you foreseeing here for our friend Mario Addison, who, again, a lot of Bills fans think we should burn at the stake and throw his remains into the lake?
So the challenge is some of those numbers you listed. It's not as clean of a number. There's not the obvious savings as the other guys. There's a $4 million cap hit. You know, it decreases after June 1st, but only because you kick $2 million of that to next year. You still have $4 million in dead cap, whether you do it all this year or go later. There's a couple scenarios where Mario Addison is a guy that I could see being released because we have another guy we want to go after. I don't think he's one you just release with anyone currently on the roster that we're just ready to do. We have 4 defensive ends. We need 4 defensive ends. I'm ready for AJ Epinesa to take a step forward. I'm ready for Daryl Johnson to maybe take a step forward. We still need a 4th guy. Like, we still need that. And Mario Addison is still our 2nd best pass rusher right now, like it or not. If, people throw around names like Von Miller and J.J. Watt and things like that, I don't think those are people in play. But in theory, if we were to add someone like that, I would take his $6 million in cap savings and give it to somebody else. Mm-hmm. I would only want to do that if we were bringing in another starting caliber defensive end, whereas I think we can cut Vernon Butler and just give his snaps to Harrison Phillips and Justin Zimmer and have really very little drop-off, and we already have those guys on the roster. So Addison is not an obvious one for me, only because his agent did a good job with his contract, and there's not great savings by moving on from him. If we go and remove some of the damage of losing him by bringing in somebody else, I think it's a tolerable, palatable amount that you can eat. I don't think they're in the habit of eating $4 million in dead cap for no reason.
That's a really great point. I've seen his name thrown around so much when it comes from a lot of Bills fans. Again, as we've seen, pretty reactionary as a whole when it comes to the cap. And we made the joke earlier, like, cut him, release him, he's dumb, blah, blah, blah. We've seen that for a lot of guys. Mario Addison's been another. You hit it right on the head. His situation is very messy. It's not as clean as like, oh yeah, like he's got a 1.6 million dead cap hit, which is nothing. So let's release him and save 7 million. It's murky, it's messy. And then when you add the positional value on top of it, again, when it comes to that defensive end position, you've got Jerry and you've got Addison and you've got Epinesa and you've got Daryl Johnson, but there's not a lot of proven commodity there other than Jerry Hughes. And Mario Addison, to a degree, is probably still, like you said, our 2nd best pass rusher. And unless we're looking to address that in the 1st round, or potentially 2nd, but 1st round, there's a lot of impact guys hoping they get there, but you may have to fill some other needs. It's a murky situation.
Yeah, there's just not an obvious path to anything. So we have the least replacement for him on the roster, not like we do with Jefferson and Butler, where I think we're probably, if we didn't add anyone in our defensive tackles next year, we're Ed Oliver, Star Lotulelei, Harrison Phillips, and Justin Zimmer. I'm not going to be ecstatic, but that's fine. Like, that's acceptable in the NFL. I hope we would draft somebody to compete or whatever, but there's not a need there. If we release Mario Addison, we only have 3 NFL caliber defensive ends. we don't have anyone else to play.
Yep.
So I see out of there, I agree with Lone Wolf, spot on. I think Addison has the highest likelihood, and the only chance I see him being released is because we add another veteran that we're giving Addison's money to that other veteran. That's the only path that I see where we lose him.
He's got that being at the position that he's at, the drop off between him and the next option and the overall hole in positional depth that it creates is much larger at that defensive end position than it is the defensive tackle spot. Exactly your point. I don't feel amazing rolling in with Starr, Ed, and then Zimmer and Harrison Phillips, knowing that's the rotation. But at the very least, it's serviceable. And
when we draft Tyler Shelvin, it'll all be fun.
Oh, your boy from LSU. He is a large man.
He's the biggest human ever. Man. That's great.
He's huge. And yeah, you had a great point earlier in discussing some things with some people on Twitter. The J.J. Watt wish list has been massive. I agree with you. I think if he goes anywhere, which it looks like he's going to go somewhere, I think he joins his brother in Pittsburgh. But if there were a scenario that exists where like, oh yeah, we're going to eat Mario Addison's dead cap and then use the $6 million that we save and apply it to the J.J. Watt deal, who's coming in on like an $8 million cap hit for the year. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let's take it and put it to something else. Sure. But if it's just straight like it again, you said it, like Bean is very smart when it comes to the financial analysis aspect of his role and his job and just eating that money, knowing the void and overall depth it creates for that position. I see that being a very hard one as well. So we're aligned on that, as we usually are. And moving on, we're staying on the defensive line. Let's talk a little Jerry Hughes. I alluded to him in the year that he had. He led the Bills in sacks again. He had a strong year. He continues to deliver and climb up the Bills' all-time sack record charts, and he's had big moments. He had a defensive touchdown this year. He sealed the edge. He's not the force that I would say he was when he was in his prime, but he still offers so much value both on the field and in terms of locker room leadership. But what are you looking at and thinking about for Jerry coming into this year?
So anyone that you see talking about releasing Jerry Hughes is a cotton-headed Ninny Muggins and is someone that you should mock aggressively in public.
Sit on a throne of lies.
So Jerry Hughes is our best pass rusher, our best defensive lineman, and probably our top 2 or 3 best defensive player. He's not young. He's not getting younger. He's still playing at a very serviceable level, and we've seen that from several guys in the past, the Jared Allens and Michael Strahans, and defensive end is a position that ages more gracefully than I think a lot of fans realize. I'm looking to extend Jerry Hughes. I'm not looking to get rid of Jerry Hughes. I want more than just this season. I would gladly offer him a 1-year extension on top of this year and have him help us out a little bit. Hey, can we give you a little bit of this year in a signing bonus? We'll give you another year added on. Not something crazy, but how about we add another year at $8 million? That's kind of the going rate for a veteran, aging, but still productive defensive end. How about we add another year in 2022 at $8 million, but we kick a little bit of this year's salary as a signing bonus. We'll give it to you right now. We'll kick it into next year. You help us out with $2 or $3 million in cap space, and we keep you around for another year. I think if you work that kind of thing out where he sees a little bit of security into the future, he'd be willing to do that. And I think it'd be crazy not to.
Completely agree. I don't see a scenario where Jerry Hughes should be off this roster or needs to be off this roster. I second that notion. Let's get him an extension. I like what he offers. And again, just from what he means to the team, but also this is a scenario. His on-field production isn't being matched by anyone else on the team. And with what our options are, it's not easy to just go and fill his role at some affordable option that we can have. He's somebody that there's very few players that I genuinely get upset about when someone has a take on them, because I recognize everybody's got opinions, but the ones I was very surprised for the Jerry Hughes hate to come through and just be like, he's done, get rid of him. I'm like, the year that he had was really good. I don't know if we're watching the same game. And yeah, so that's
in our system, Tyler talking about how critical it is for Epinesa to take a step forward. That's very real. Ideally, by 2022, we've added someone here where Jerry Hughes is our 3rd defensive end.
Correct.
And a rotational guy who's just really valuable. Look at the stretch. I'm drawing a blank. Chiefs pass rusher who went to the Colts.
Justin Houston
has had a really nice end of his career in that mode where you don't need to play 60-70% of the snaps anymore. Just come in and play some really good high leverage snaps for us and make a couple big plays here or there. I think Jerry Hughes could have a whole last phase of his career here that we haven't seen yet, that he doesn't need to play 60-70% of the snaps. He can still be productive and add that. So ideally, AJ Epinesa, I don't see it from Daryl Johnson, but I know some people who do, or some other guy that we draft here or sign becomes more of the prominent players from a snap count standpoint. But Jerry Hughes can still be playing some of the most important snaps of the game for a couple years to come.
I think that's an excellent point. I think he has a decent amount left in the tank, and at the very least, if we're looking at 2021, I love AJ Epinesa. I like what he did, especially towards the back half of the year. I don't see anyone else on this Bills roster up front who is ready to assume the mantle of number one pass rusher for the Bills and fill Jerry's spot, or just the amount of snaps. Again, he put in so much work. No one else is ready for that at this point. And we stay on the defensive side, but kind of more special teams-ish. Tyler Medikevich, salary cap hit of 3.7 for 2021. A guy who, again, I feel like that a lot of people see that money and are like almost $4 million for a guy who just plays special teams, but he does offer value. But there could be an option that's better than a just straight out release that a lot of people are clamoring for and looking at a potential pay cut for him to keep him on the team and allow him to do some things.
So he was not only an important or valuable special teams player, he was phenomenal. Like he was a great special teams player. Like he came in.
And the Bills had a great special teams year. Coverage ability, like not just the return game. Their special teams units were strong.
Adding a player like Medikevich is why. Like he was a big piece of that. Him and Tywan Jones, the two of them were really the only big material differences in the special teams units, other than other players just developing. So I don't necessarily want to release him. You can't bring him back at that number. And his agent knows that. If we release him, he's not getting that number on the open market right now. So I think he is an obvious pay cuts candidate. Also not crazy, maybe an extension candidate where you kick in a couple. Hey, how about we add another year also at 1.5 million and we give you 2 years at 3 million? And you give us back about 1.5, 2 million of that in some cap space that we need. You don't have to go fight for it on the open market. And we're able to keep a valuable special teamer that I don't want to go anywhere. He's a really nice player to have in that role. So I'd love to find a way to keep him. We can't keep him at that number. That's just not feasible in this market. No one would give him that number in this market right now. So I think Bean will take care of that and bring him back at a healthier number.
Yeah, I second that completely.
And a release is not off the table. It is possible.
No, that is fair. But it's similar to that John Brown aspect of like, what leverage does the player have in going to the open market to the point that they say, no, I'm not taking a pay cut. No, I don't want to restructure. You're going to have to release me because I can get better on the open market. It's hard. It's going to be hard for John Brown to get exactly your point. It's going to be even harder for a special teams ace in this nuclear winter and this COVID salary cap climate to go out and what are you trying to get? Like $3-4 million a year? You're not going to get that for a special teams ace, especially one who it's not even like Medikevich moonlights as a defensive substitute at times. He is almost pure special teams.
Yeah,
and so
he and Tywan Jones are exclusively special teams players.
Yes, and we dress them for that. And finding another team to pay you what you're getting now to do that same thing, not something that I think he wants to look at. So good on Tyler. Moving to another one who...
This is my Jerry Hughes. This is the one that makes me the most mad.
This one is mine as well. He's higher than Jerry Hughes for me because I've invested a lot of time into the offensive line tape this year, and especially after Eric Turner and I broke down the
awesome
Bills
job, by the way. You guys did a phenomenal job.
Thank you so much. There was a lot of tape. We went through Eric even more than me. There was a lot of tape, man. I was up to like 2 a.m. like every night just being like tape. But I like what Mitch Morris did throughout the year. And that's what we're talking about, Mitch Morris. I blew the lead in. Mitch Morris is someone who I already valued. And then going through the tape even more, I really like what he offers. And I know there was the drama of like, he sat and he's not one of our best guys. And is he hurt? Is there some ulterior motive? So on and so forth. And people are clamoring for him to be cut. Mitch Morris is the anchor of the offensive line. He does so many things tremendously well. His mental his mental ability to play the position is so tremendous, and that's something you need in your center, in addition to his flexibility and I'm not talking about like cap flexibility. I'm talking about his like physical body flexibility, the way he's able to move, his pulling ability, his ability to fold and lead, and his combo block ability, play recognition, defensive front identification, and what he means to Josh. He is someone who I do not want to see gone under any circumstances. And like you, I get very heated when people call for his head. However, I understand the reasoning behind it, and I see a situation where he potentially could be released, but I think a restructure is more likely, and I know you do as well.
Yeah, there's a couple different things. I get it. He had his 6th documented concussion. There was a game coming up right before the bye week with Arizona. I was projecting it the entire time that, hey, they're going to sit him here. He gets 27 days off before he plays again. You know, it's crazy not to let him rest here. Then all of a sudden, some questions started badgering McDermott on a press conference, and he said some weird stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody remembers pieces of it, but not the other parts. So he also said in that same press conference that he was not benched, and that he says a lot of things are a coach's decision or that he doesn't want to get into, and he uses those vague coach speak things. And that turned into that he wasn't one of the best 5 linemen and that they wanted to roll with something when, you know, he also got their wrist slapped last year for not disclosing injuries with Jerry Hughes. And if he was technically cleared from the concussion protocol, he can't say that they're still resting him and trying to wait more.
Correct.
And it's just all those different things. I think it's crazy to read into just one press conference that all of a sudden we know John Feliciano should be the starting center instead of Mitch Morris. John Feliciano is not that good of a center. He's a pretty good guard who actually struggled a little bit this year. If we move Feliciano to center and give him Mitch Morris's money, which by releasing him we would save $5 million, if we gave that to John Feliciano, we just got worse at 2 positions because now we're worse at center and we're worse at guard without Feliciano. There are a couple things. Mitch Morris has multiple years left on his deal. If we restructure his deal and just shuffle around his base salary, we can save about $3 million. If you're telling me that we can restructure that to save $3 million, or we can release him to save $5 million, give me the $3 million and keep Mitch Morris. What is wrong with you crazy people?
I think people see the initial, like McDermott. I think people try to play detective and see the comments and are like, McDermott doesn't like him, and or he's bad, or there's some ulterior motive. And then they look at the salary cap stuff and they see that he's got the 4th highest cap hit, and they see that it's over $10 million, and they see that he's had a concussion history. And I think he just gets thrown into this bucket of, we can get rid of him, we can be fine. And I highly disagree with that. There's a reason that he became the highest paid center in the league when the Bills signed him. He helped transform that offensive line. He is so valuable. And
you guys talked about it in the film breakdown. We did a disservice to him by playing all this zone and not using his ability to get out in space in a gap scheme where he might be the best pulling center in the NFL. He's awesome out in space. Maybe with a full off season and a regular training camp, we can get back to more of that gap scheme, which helped the run game in 2019 and hurt us pivoting away from that in 2020, and also plays into, maybe Dawkins has surpassed Morris as our best offensive lineman, maybe, but plays into one of our 2 best offensive linemen's skill set by getting him out in space more.
1,000%. I literally was going to that, and I was going to say, I'm not trying to like plug something that
you guys did an awesome job with it.
Thank you very much again. I appreciate you. It was really eye-opening to me. It changed. It reinforced and buttressed what I already thought about Mitch Morris, and then elevated him to another level. Just those pulls and his success in what he can do in a gap scheme run, which is what Dable and the offense wants to do. But we got away from that in 2020 because we weren't executing and we didn't have the horses to run it. And our guard play was very poor at executing those gap schemes, but John Feliciano included in that, which has colored my opinions a little bit on him, which we're going to get to in a minute. But you hit it on the head. We did a disservice to him. He was I'm sorry, I appreciate you, Nicholas. Thank you for my A+ YouTube buttress. Thank you very much. There's a system where he is more successful, and that is a more gap scheme based, but he functioned at more of a zone based option out of the center. I don't see us getting away from him. I like the question there from Brian. Do we start looking at available upgrades for the other guard position? That's a tremendous question, and I think it's something we're going to get to as we start to talk about some other players when we get into in a short little while here about Milano and Daryl Williams and Feliciano. We need to upgrade those positions and do some things because we didn't execute the system we wanted and the scheme that we wanted, and it did a disservice to someone like Mitch Morris. But I'm glad we're on the same page here. I tolerate a lot of things, and I will never tell someone to just get out. But the people who are coming in are like, well, you should just get rid of Mitch Morris. I'm immediately just like the Will Smith and Kevin James gift from Hitch. I just want to slap on both sides of the face and get out. Like I'm not here for it.
No, I'm glad we're on the same page.
Yep. If you weren't, I would just remove you from this stream and then probably cancel the episode out of just pure anger.
Just delete
Next. Yep. Just delete it. One last guy, Stefan Diggs. Obvious
We're going to
cut.
release him. Obvious cut.
Underperformed. Just poor attitude. No production. Bad rapport with the quarterback. Doesn't play enough Call of Duty. Just a whole bunch of negatives that you don't like. But no, he's someone who only has 3 years left on his current 5-year, $72 million deal that he signed with Minnesota in 2018. And similar to Morse, who only has 2 years left on his 4-year, $44 million deal that he signed in 2019, this is someone who we'd like to stay around, for obvious reasons. And so a restructure, but even more important than the restructure, an extension to keep him around longer term, but also save us some cap space now and maybe accruing more cap hit in the future when the cap goes back up and it's not as severe is a very likely option and something we should aim for when it comes to Stefan Diggs.
Absolutely. So you're talking about 3 years left at around $37 million. He got a healthy chunk. So the 5-year, $72 million deal was a good deal. It's not like he was underpaid or anything like that. But now you're seeing receivers with, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, all getting that $20 million range. It's right for him to get that. I think they can do that by saying, hey, Stefan, why don't we add 2 more years onto the end of your deal? That's still age 31 and 32. He's certainly a receiver that seems like he's going to play very well over that stretch. We're going to put both of those on at $20 million a year. We're going to add a 2-year, $40 million extension. Your agent gets to tout that as a 2-year, $40 million extension in new money. But we're also going to take the $11.7 million in this year's salary, drop you down to the minimum. We're going to turn that $11 million or $10 million change into a signing bonus. We're going to cut you a check for it right now. And then now that we've now added 2 years, we now have a 5-year deal. We can spread that $10 million signing bonus out as $2 million each year over the 5 years. So this year, all of a sudden, his cap hit goes from $12.2 million down to about $3.2 million and creates $9 million in cap space by giving him a $40 million extension that he deserves. His agent deserves to wave that around that he's a $20 million a year receiver, and we simply tack on those 2 years to get him into that area. And we can create a ton of cap space by doing it. So that's another one that's a no-brainer to me. I think they want to reward him. I think they can do it with some creative guarantees too, to say that, hey, we're adding those years on, but we're adding some guarantees to the 2022 and 2023 salary. So again, his agent gets to now pronounce it as the $10 million bonus this year. Let's say we guarantee both of those years. Now it's $30 million in new guaranteed money and the 2 years that are not guaranteed, but adding them on at $20 million a year that they fully intend to pay him because he's playing great. I think that's a really solid way to structure that. It gives the agent some nice stuff to wave around as a flag, and it gives the team some much needed cap space while giving him money that's well deserved.
Yes, it literally checks every box. Diggs and his agent both get to puff up their chest because of what they've accomplished and what they've earned. The Bills get some needed relief now in 2021, which they need. And then as the part that it's not even just to get clever, we add more years to a guy who we want to stay here for a long time. His impact on this team was just a tremendous move. I think he came in with so many questions and people thinking, oh, he's going to have attitude problems. Does he bond with Josh? And all he did was lead the league in receptions and yards and also help my opponent beat me in my fantasy football championship. But I'm not bitter about it. I'm fine. I'm over it.
No one's bitter.
I'm not upset that I had Alvin Kamara and I lost because my opponent had Tom Brady, Stefan Diggs, and Devontae Adams, and they all put up like
6 touchdowns from Kamara in your championship game and lost.
Yep, I also had Kyler Murray, who got nothing. And yeah, he had Brady. He had a really great team, but it was highlighted by Diggs, Brady, and Devontae Adams. That was the Brady week where they played the Lions and their whole defensive staff was gone.
Gosh.
So he had they put up 42 points in the first half. Yeah, I lost. And the year before I had Michael Thomas, and I lost in the finals going into Monday night. I had Mike Boone, and my opponent had Aaron Jones, and I lost by 2 points because of Aaron Jones's 60-yard touchdown with 9 left in the fourth. That was just garbage time and not needed. But I'm fine. I'm not.
You don't even remember it at all.
No, I don't remember it in horrid, vivid detail, and I don't stay awake at night because I'm still super bothered by it. I love fantasy football. Yeah. But yeah, Diggs is a monster. Great impact, and it's nice to know. I think that's the thing that I really enjoy talking with you and driving home for the people watching is that there are things that we can do to alleviate some of the tightness we feel with the cap, but it also makes sense from a roster standpoint, and it's not just we need to do things because we need to save money. No, there are things we can do to save money this year that also make sense for the good of the team, both on and off the field, and Stefan Diggs is one, Mitch Morris is another. Now we start to shift focuses a little bit. We start to... Greg said, okay, and he leaned back in his chair because he knows we're about to switch. Oh, he's adjusting himself again. This is big time. It's an important time. And I've changed the graphic if you're watching up on the video. Matt Milano, Daryl Williams, John Feliciano, the three big – there's a lot of unrestricted free agents for the Bills. I believe we're down to 14 now as of this moment, unrestricted free agents. But it is headlined by Matt Milano, Daryl Williams, and John Feliciano. What do we do? What are our options for them? We're going to start with Matt Milano, who – according to Spot Track, his market value is $13.8 million, average annual value. They have him pegged at a 3-year, $41.479 million deal, which would make him the 6th highest paid outside linebacker in the NFL. Realistically, he's going to see a contract somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 to $14 million with an average annual value. Greg, let's talk about it. Let's talk about some contract options for Milano. Is he worth it? Should we give it to him? Should we sign Alyssa Milano? What are your thoughts?
Interesting option. So PFF had him at $11 million a year. I've seen a couple people at $14 million a year. I think it's in that range. I will be a little surprised if he gets all the way to 14. I think that gets talked about a lot. This is not great timing for that to happen. I think that every team is going to use the injury concerns as a negotiating ploy against him. He hasn't had any Pro Bowl seasons. He hasn't had any All-Pro seasons. He doesn't have some of the normal things that an agent's going to use as, negotiating leverage. I think it's closer to 12 million is where I've been around that the whole time. And, at times I've had, 3 years, 36 to 39. I actually think the team is going to approach him more from an angle of longer-term security. We want you here long-term, but we need you to help us out a little bit. I think they're going to lean more like a 5-year deal at 55 to 60 million, where they're going to, hey, it's 11 or 12 million, but you're getting better long-term security. They will have some games played escalators that could guarantee the following year's season. That, hey, you can include some additional guarantees that trigger future year guaranteed money as long as you hit X amount of, 15 games played plus, something like that, that will go through there, or a snap percentage of play. So I think you can do that. When you look at that, you can also mess around with some different things. So say you do that 5-year deal and you make $15 million of it a signing bonus. So in the first year, he's getting $15 million in cash, and you make it a $3 million salary. So he's getting $18 million in the first year. Everybody's happy about that. But all of a sudden now his cap hit is only $6 million in the first year. And the remaining years aren't crazy. The remaining years are only $13.5 million. So it's still within the range of what you were looking to pay them. So you're able to structure it in that way that you can bring him back. And this is the one where I've seen a lot of people talk about, well, he's going to need $13 million a year. We can't add that. The average annual value, you see people talk about AAV, and it's that average value over the life of a deal. That's not what each year's cap hit is.
Correct.
You're able to structure it in a way that you're able to bring him back without eating up. We just went through 9 different guys that we can create cap space with. We're not looking to give it all to one guy here. So all of a sudden now you can re-sign and bring back Matt Milano purely with the savings from cutting Quentin Jefferson or cutting Vernon Butler. And now all of a sudden we're equal for that year. And I know that Lone Wolf talked about it here. It's not kicking too much down the road. You're making the future years at $13.5 million. That's not an insane number. $13.5 million is a reasonable deal in the future. It's not like we're bloating some weird $20 million, poison pill in the future that we can't afford. You're able to structure it that way, make it healthy. You're going to hear that same logic from me in the next couple guys. But I think it's very feasible for Milano that they can bring him back on a deal, extend the life of it a little bit, keep him here long term with the Bills, make it palatable for him to fit here in 2021, and then move forward, being able to still afford him in the future years.
I love it. Again, you're going to hear this a lot from me. I second what Greg is saying on this topic here. I think Matt Milano is tremendously important to this team. The Bills, the linebackers in the Sean McDermott defense are tremendously important. Their range, their coverage ability. Matt Milano's been one of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL the last several years. I believe from 2018 to 2019, those 2 seasons, there were only 3 linebackers in the NFL who were better in coverage than him. One of them was Levante David, who's an all-pro almost every single year. And Milano does a lot for this defense. His role is very important. And this is a massive domino for me, because if we don't sign Matt Milano and he's gone, addressing his position in free agency or with ideally our first round pick in the draft, depending on who falls, that for me personally becomes priority number 1. Because I think granted it could happen, I don't think we lose both Milano and Daryl Williams. Those are the top 2 for me. I think if we get one, we could potentially end up with both, but I don't think we lose both. If we get Milano, maybe we lose Williams. If we get Williams, we probably lose Milano. But if we don't get Milano, addressing that linebacker spot has to be addressed. And I guess to wrap it up on him, actually, no, we'll wait. We'll wait on that. We'll go to Daryl Williams. We'll go to Daryl Williams next. And speaking about Daryl Williams, another one he had a really great year for the Buffalo Bills, tremendous in his pass pro, held TJ Watt to his lowest grade of the year, coming off the edge against Pittsburgh, really solidified that position. And he came in on a 1-year, $2.25 million deal almost at the end of the offseason, was just brought in, almost taking a dude on a flyer. We were hoping he could regain some all-pro form that he had in Carolina at right tackle. We were thinking maybe does he play guard? What happens? He was one of the anchors of the offensive line in terms of snaps and games played. He and Deion Dawkins were the pillars of that offensive line at right and left tackle, respectively. He had the most snaps amongst all Buffalo Bills offensive linemen in 2020. He had the best pass blocking grade amongst all Buffalo Bills starting offensive linemen, the 3rd best run blocking grade, although he did miss some down blocks and some things that Eric and I broke down in the Cover One film room this week. Shameless plug. And anytime in his pass blocking grade, run blocking grade, he was only behind by like 1 or 2 points behind Deion Dawkins. So he had a phenomenal year. He had a very good year. He did show some deficiencies in the tape, but he only allowed 29 pressures in 19 games. He held up great against Baltimore's edge rushers. We mentioned what he did against TJ Watt. And looking at his value from Spot Track for Daryl Williams, they have him pegged at an average annual value of $7.9 million. Again, I love your point that you made. Just because that's someone's average annual value, that just means you take the total money divided by the years of their contract, and that's what it comes out to. That doesn't mean he'd get 7.9 every year. He could get $1 million one year and then $1 gajillion the next. It's just what it balances out to. So Daryl, also gajillion is a real number. I looked it up before this episode in prep. So Daryl Williams, Spot Track has him pegged at $7.9 million average annual value. They have his contract for this year in a potential deal, a 2-year, $15.722 million deal, which would place him 10th amongst all right tackles. I know you've got him pegged at a little bit of a different number, and he's someone that we would like to see stay around because of his production.
Yeah, so he's a tough one for me. There was a point at the mid-year point, PFF had him as their all-pro right tackle. He did slide a little bit from that point and did struggle in a couple spots here or there, but he played well and was in a good spot overall. I don't think he quite stayed at that. At that point, I was worried he was going to get like the George Fant deal from somebody where they're going to throw him $10, $11, $12 million a year. I do think he deserves kind of that Brian Bulaga type number. So Bulaga got 3 years, $27 million from the Chargers. I think Williams is right around there. So 3 years, $24 million, 3 years, $27 million, $8 to $9 million a year. I think he deserves that. I don't think the $10, $11, $12 million number I've seen thrown around is something he's going to get. I think that he was good. I don't think he was exceptional. So there's a couple. Tyler Moton is a guy who's a free agent. I think he's going to get some bigger money. We'll see where that goes. You never know. Offensive line is always sought after. There's always a high level of interest in offensive line, and it's something that we shouldn't be shocked if somebody throws a bunch of money at Daryl Williams. I hope it's not the case. He's another one where we could bring him back 3 years. You could easily do $6 million in 2021 and then $9 million in 2022 and 2023. You're still never bloating it and kicking the nasty can down the road, but you're able to get him back at a reasonable number there. That's roughly what I would do. 3 years, 24, maybe 27 million, that ballpark. 6 or 7 in the first year, then 9 or 10 in each of the following years. You're keeping it at a reasonable number and getting him in healthy in the 2021 season without a crazy number that hurts our cap space.
Yeah, fantastic points all around. I think he's played himself into a nice contract.
Yeah.
I don't think he's played himself to a price that puts him out of Buffalo's range.
And luckily for us, there are some higher level tackles who are hitting free agency that are going to get. So the real desperate teams that try to throw a whole bunch of money out, there's not that many of them. And the ones that do, luckily, I think are going to go after them. And a couple of the teams with a ton of cap space are like the Colts and the Browns, who already have 2 tackles and have already spent that money, that maybe there's a chance we would be able to survive that.
Yeah, and the chance of him coming back, I think, is high based on what he could get on the open market. My question for you, I was going to ask it before we started talking about Daryl Williams. If you had to choose, granted, given the monetary value they would come back with, because this has been a hot topic debate amongst all Bills fans, if you could pick, again, say you could only pick one. If you could pick Matt Milano coming back at the contract we talked about, 5 years, $60 million, or Daryl Williams coming back at the 3 years, $24 million, what would you pick and why?
So it's probably not a popular decision. I think I would take Daryl Williams. I think that Matt Milano is better at linebacker than Williams is at tackle.
Yes.
But our team isn't going anywhere because of our linebacker play. We're going somewhere because of our quarterback play, and I want to keep Josh Allen protected, and Daryl Williams did that this year. And the rolling the dice on replacing either of them is not impossible, but it's not a guarantee. And if we whiff at linebacker on the draft pick, we can still have a good season. If we whiff at the pick at tackle, our season is over and Josh will get mauled. I can't afford that. I can't afford to roll that dice and just hope that the guy we pick is awesome and ready to step in and protect the most important asset on this entire franchise. And I get it that Milano is more popular. I like Milano more than Daryl Williams. I think Milano is a better linebacker than Williams is a tackle. Tackle is more important. Protecting the quarterback is more important. And we'll get to it later. You know, Levante David, KJ Wright, Jayon Brown, Devondre Campbell. Devondre Campbell signed a 1 year, $6 million deal. Devondre Campbell is like 95% of Matt Milano. So he couldn't find a home last year and signed a 1 year deal with the Cardinals. We could find one of those guys and draft a linebacker and patch that together with AJ Klein and make that work. It's not ideal. I'd love to have both. If you force my hand, I would take Williams over Milano.
It hurts my heart. I go back and forth on it every day, but I think I'm in that same boat. Milano, I'm a defense-first guy, and Milano is my favorite Bill. I love him. I love what he does. I love his positional versatility. I love that he was drafted in the 5th round. I love that he's homegrown. It's just great. But to your point, and we've said it throughout the year, this Bills team is a Josh Allen team. They are a passing offense. We'd like them to run the ball with more effectiveness and impact, but the tackle position, when you find guys that work, you need to keep them around. And Daryl Williams, he's got some deficiencies in the run game that I'd like to see him clean up, but his pass pro is very strong. He had a good year. He functioned well in the system. And as you alluded to, as many people said in the chat here, you got to protect the franchise, which is Josh Allen. And positional value, offensive tackle trumps outside linebacker. And I unfortunately, it genuinely hurts my heart, but I think I have to agree that Daryl Williams has to be the play. I also want to pull up this comment from Alexander One of the biggest losses I'm worried about is Greg Tompsett, who might get himself picked up by a front office somewhere. That is fantastic and spot on. Greg is the man in many ways.
You guys are lucky. I'm very, very expensive.
Yeah, he's priced himself out of so many GM jobs. You guys would just have no idea. And so that's Milano. That's Daryl Williams. And the last person here up on this graphic, John Feliciano, guard for the Buffalo Bills, signed a 2-year $7.25 million deal in 2019. Oh, maybe 4. I have bad handwriting. He had the top run blocking grade amongst Bills starters, but in going through the film, he really did struggle in a lot of ways and missed some assignments and just didn't have that athleticism that the Bills offensive line needed up front. This is what's really killer. He had the 27th pass blocking grade amongst Bills players. That obviously includes more than the offensive line. And that grade is lower than Bills Mafia person that everyone loves to hate, Brian Winters. His pass blocking grade was worse than Brian Winters, and everybody loves to throw around how bad Winters is. Feliciano was worse in his pass pro than Winters was. He had 32 pressures allowed in 12 games. That was second on the team, but he also played less than Deion Dawkins. Dawkins allowed the most pressures, but with 36, but Dawkins played in 7 more games than Feliciano did. We saw Feliciano get eaten up against the Chiefs. I'm torn on this one as well. I love what Feliciano brings with his attitude, his mentality, his leadership, his toughness. I love that he was right there to smack somebody in the mouth when they kind of gave Josh the business in that Chiefs game. I love what he does from a toughness and just all the non-on-field things. But when it comes to on-field execution and athleticism, I think he's been priced a little bit too much for us. Spotrac has him pegged at $8.4 million average annual value. They have him somewhere in the range of a 4-year, $33.489 million deal. That would pay him as the 17th highest paid guard in the NFL. And I know you've obviously got some thoughts on what we could do for his contract. So what do you think of potentially bringing Feliciano back? What value would you like to see it at? And what kind of priority do you give him?
So if he gets that number, there's no chance. If somebody offers him that 4 years, $33 million, there's no chance. That's just far outside of where I think his value is. And if somebody else sees that, God bless him, go get that money. If we can get him back at the Quentin Spain deal, like that 3 years, $15 million, maybe 3 years, $18 million, the $5 or $6 million, I'm okay if John Feliciano is our worst lineman. If he's our 5th best lineman and we upgraded the other spot, I'm okay with that. My concern is if we don't do anything there, and then the idea is we're going to let Ford and Botker compete at the other guard, and we bring back Feliciano, and we didn't have good enough guard play this year, I'm a little bit concerned. So that's an area that I'm a little surprised. I think there was a point where I probably would have pegged Feliciano as a pretty easy re-signing, and I think I've soured on that a little bit. I think his struggles down the stretch, it is purely based on the number. Ideally, in a best case scenario, he is your 6th lineman and can play all 3 interior spots. But I just think somebody's going to pay him to be a starter. I'm okay if we pay him and then it's him and Ford competing for a spot because we drafted a guy who's really good at the other spot, or we added another guy who's really good. I don't want to be in that range where he's being paid as the answer at guard, where the film tells me he's not the answer.
Spot on. I agree with that. I feel like it's like I've seen too much and I can't go back. What I've seen from the film, I can't unsee it. And some of the struggles and vulnerabilities that he had and deficiencies that he had, I can't unsee those or really get past them. And at that average annual value, again, at $8.4 million, if he gets somewhere around that, we need to be out. And because if we're going to go that high, I wrote this down just for reference. Brandon Sheriff, the guard from the Redskins, who is phenomenal. Yeah. His average annual value is pegged at 10.9. And which is only 2.5 higher than Feliciano. I know that's a little relative, but if we're going to have to break the bank more for Feliciano, I'd rather go full tilt and sign.
If we're breaking the bank, go get Scherf or Joe Tooney or someone like that. Like if we're going to break the bank on somebody, go bring in like a stud guard who's going to, really, evolve this line into the next level. Yeah,
and I don't think he has the athleticism to be what we need in the scheme that we have regularly. I love Vera Tucker and Wyatt Davis. Tucker's tape at USC was great. Wyatt Davis coming out of Ohio State. Those are both options at the end of the first round. The first round for us is going to be so intriguing to see what we do and what hole we choose to fill. But there are options. To your point, if we don't sign Feliciano, there are other options and ways we can go both in the draft and free agency to address some of those things. And I'm on board if he comes back at the Quentin Spain deal or a lower cap number around $5 million, I'm okay with that. But if he starts to get priced, if we were, and I don't think Bean would, but if we brought him back at over like 6 or 7, even 6 or 7 million, I'd be disappointed because I don't think that he's worth it for that money that is going to come back. And we just can't afford it in 2021 and going forward when some other new contracts could potentially be on the books. One that we want to hit on briefly in this episode here is Josh Allen's contract. I don't know if people know this, but Josh Allen had a pretty good year this year, I guess, by some standards. Even though everybody knew it, he was touted and lauded for his accuracy coming out of college. Everybody knew that he would be a stud. All the analysts pegged him as being the best quarterback out of his class. But now time has come to pay that man eventually. He's got a big contract that's coming up, and it's going to be a big one. He's proven that he can be the franchise guy, an MVP candidate. He's the trigger man for this team. The team is his, both literally and figuratively. What kind of contract could we potentially see for Josh Allen coming down the pike?
All
Besides
of the
a gajillion
dollars.
dollars.
Yeah, all of the Pagula bucks. He will now own natural gas wells in multiple states. It's wonderful that we are now going to have to pay an exorbitant, painful amount of money to a franchise quarterback because we have a franchise quarterback. It's awesome. It's so fantastic. The Bills have a franchise quarterback that deserves to be paid all the money. So a quick reference, when the Kansas City Chiefs gave Patrick Mahomes the 10-year, $503 million deal, do you realize that his cap number changed absolutely zero in the year that it was signed or the next year, which was his 4th-year rookie deal or his 5th-year option year? They only added it on, and really the contract was a 12-year, $26 million deal. They just didn't talk about the last year of the rookie deal and the 5th-year option. They only talked about the 10 years that were added on afterwards. It was actually a $12 million or 12-year deal. I don't think it's crazy that the Bills could do a similar structure. I think they want him here forever. I think they want him here to never, ever leave. And I don't think it's crazy that they give him a 10-year, $400 million deal. Whew. And that if Josh Allen, wants to be super nice and it's $380 million instead of $400 million, okay. It's not going to be some huge hometown discount. He's not going to play for low money. I also don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to put them to the screws to eke out every single possible penny. I don't think he's going to say, hey, you have to pay me more than Deshaun Watson, or you have to pay me more than Patrick Mahomes. I think that he's going to get a phenomenal deal. I think that he's going to get a ton of money. And honestly, whether it's $350 million, $380 million, $400 million, if you have Josh Allen around for 10 more years, I don't care. It ain't my money. It's so much money that the difference between 35, 37, 39, 40 is not material. That's not the difference in being a really good team or not. We still have to structure and plan around an enormous amount of money going to our quarterback. So whether that's 35 or 40 a year, it just doesn't matter. It's just not that big of a difference. He's going to get what he deserves. He deserves to be paid like one of the highest valued assets in the NFL because he's one of the highest valued assets in the NFL. So honestly, if I had to guess right now, I would guess the Buffalo Bills announce that they exercise his 5th-year option, that he keeps the 4th year of his rookie deal, he keeps the 5th year of his 5th-year option, and then they add 10 years and $400 million, and that it doesn't impact the 2021 or the 2022 cap at all, and then he gets a ton of money. And it's, that's wonderful. That's what I'm looking for, and by the time that happens, we're going to have all that Bezos money from the Amazon getting involved in the NFL TV deals, and the cap will go up 30 million and then another 30 million, and it'll be fine. It'll all net out, and eventually 7 years from now, his $40 million a year is going to look like a discount compared to what other guys are getting paid. I'm really excited to see it, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, same page, and Spot Track has him pegged at a 40.6 average annual value. They see him becoming the second highest paid QB in the NFL, which is a really cool thing for a guy that so many people thought was going to be terrible and mocked the Bills for drafting this raw, unpolished guy. And yeah, he is as much a part of this city as I've seen any player be in a very long time, especially for like being so young. I think eventually like Kaiir Williams became the face of the Bills and was this fan favorite and guy that everybody loved, but it was like a gradual climb up. And no disrespect to the position, but he was a defensive tackle. It's hard to be a quarterback in today's NFL. It's a quarterback driven league. You're always under the microscope. You're always under the spotlight, and Allen's become the face of this team. He's had a really good year. I still don't think we've seen his ceiling. He's still continuing to trend upward, and giving him that deal.
And he's got room for improvement in the mental side of the game that we're going to continue to see improvement, even if it's not seen, mechanical things. He's got that iron.
Correct. We haven't seen him even start to plateau yet. He is still on that upward trend. It may not be as drastic as it was last year to this year. We're not going to see 80 touchdowns. Actually, we might, because the league likes offense and they don't like anybody to hit or touch anyone on defense. But it's a deal that really works. And I love that you mentioned what the Chiefs did with Mahomes, because so many people when Mahomes signed that deal was like, I don't get it. Like, they didn't have any money for the cap. How are they still able to keep Sammy Watkins and Chris Jones and have Tyrann Mathieu? I don't understand it. It's because it didn't affect the current year or the next year. It was a sneaky deal. It was good. It was smart. And it set that foundation for what other quarterback deals can be, i.e. Josh Allen's deal coming down the pike. And yeah, he's going to get that kind of money. You don't get to be in the MVP conversation and get the credit for turning a team around and not bank somewhere between the $35 to $40 million deal. And so back up Scrooge McDuck's truck and empty his entire vault of gold coins, and let's pay the man. And another guy that we would have to pay, also coming up on his 5th-year option, Tremaine Edmonds, a very polarizing,
weirdly controversial player.
I put out a tweet today. You and I were talking offline. I put out a tweet about a lot of the guys that we're going over, guys who were already on the team, so like Milano, Williams, Feliciano, Edmonds, and Addison, and talking about like their average annual value on Spot Track and what they could be. And I mentioned Tremaine Edmonds in it, and there was a decent amount of people that were like, decline the option, get rid of him now. He's terrible. And I was really taken aback by it. Like, I stared at it.
It's totally normal to play in the Pro Bowl at 21 and 22 years old, right? And then have the team let you walk. That's a totally normal thing to happen.
It's crazy. And he's still – I recognize that he didn't take the leap that – I think people wanted him to take – not even I think. I know people wanted him to take the leap this year that Josh Allen took on the offense. And they wanted him to be –
I said in the preseason I thought he could be in Defensive Player of the Year discussions. So I was disappointed because my expectations were here. I wasn't disappointed because he was a bum. Like, people need to have some context.
Yes, he didn't hit the ceiling and the bar that we had set for him this year and that we had hoped, but he also played a significant portion of the year with one arm, and not having star up front impacted him. But yes. I love – we like to have notes and sheets up here in order to keep ourselves nice and organized for you. And Greg's notes are fantastic for Tremaine Edmonds. So it's Tremaine Edmonds' 5th-year option. Pick it up without question. Parentheses, 2 Pro Bowls, ... Stop nitpicking. That is the message for Bills Mafia.
It just kills me that the kid he's the youngest linebacker to ever be drafted, and he's played in 2 Pro Bowls in his first 3 seasons, and is about to turn 23. Like, we're going to get to re-sign him at like age 24. It's insane. And people are saying to get rid of him. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I want to see further development and improvement? Yes. Am I ready to back up the Brinks truck and give him some like Luke Kuechly type contract? No. Like, that's fine. But anyone who's saying we're not going to pick up the 5th-year option is crazy. Like, that's insane. Yes, of course we're going to pick up the 5th-year option, and then we'll continue to evaluate. We get to see him in his 4th and 5th year. We get to see 2 more seasons of football before we have to sign him to anything. And at that point, we can mess around with franchise tags and all kinds of other stuff. But ideally, we're extending him and signing him to a very nice contract to keep him here forever, because some of the things that people legitimately are nitpicking about, getting cleaner with his reads, getting off of blocks a little quicker, not overcommitting and being too aggressive, that he's still going to develop those because he's 22 and that he still has time to develop and grow. I think that there's so much that we can get from him, and people who just assume that they understand the linebacker play to that degree, because they do watch, and don't get me wrong, he misses a tackle here or there, he picks a wrong gap here or there. Yes. He also makes the right play 90% of the time, and that it's boring and you don't see those because they're not like highlight reel blow up plays. He does the right thing the vast majority of the time, and he's young, rangy, athletic with the wingspan of a pterodactyl.
Oh, it's beautiful. I was going to say gargoyle, but I like pterodactyl much better.
I stole that because the guys over at Rockpile like to call Daryl Johnson the pterodactyl, so I can't lay claim to that.
Okay, fair enough. I like that you're honest, though. You're honest with your sourcing and your proper formatting there. Yeah, I second that. And it was just – so Spot Track has him pegged at a 13.5 average annual value. They have him around a 5-year, $67.525 million deal, which would place him 7th amongst inside linebackers in terms of like a new deal and new money. And I'm with you. I'm not saying we should make him the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. I'm not saying we should break the bank and back up the Brinks truck like we would for Josh Allen, but he's someone who's still trending upward, and he's still so young. I believe Nathan in the chat mentioned that he's basically like the same age as a lot of the linebackers that are coming out in this year's draft.
I had made the comment last year, so he was finishing his 3rd season, just finished his 2nd Pro Bowl season out of 3. And if he had declared for the draft this year, he would have been younger than 46 of the 60 eligible linebackers who just finished their rookie season. He would have been younger than 75% of the rookie linebackers that just finished their rookie year. And we got our 3rd season and 2nd Pro Bowl season from him. So it's certainly a good problem to have. I'm not saying he's infallible. I'm not saying he's an all-pro, finished product, but he does a lot more good than bad.
Yes, and I'm with you on he over pursues sometimes, and he makes the wrong read, and sometimes he plays too slow, and you can see him thinking instead of reacting, and it takes him a little while to process. But he's still a pup. He's still not even just growing mentally; he's still growing physically into his body. There's a lot of upside for him still, and yes, we need to pick up that 5th-year option, and he's going to be a functioning part of this team going forward. And as we start to leave the players that are currently on the Bills or were on the Bills, we start to shift our focus towards the overall class of free agency and looking at free agents in terms of both need and affordability for the Buffalo Bills. And because, again, we're going to have to fill some stuff. A lot of it is going to come through the draft, but free agency, there are going to be some pieces. We're going to be a factor in there in some way, shape, or form. Bean loves good value anywhere he can get it. And we're going to start with the linebacker position. We talked about Matt Milano. There is a good amount of chance that he leaves the Buffalo Bills, which makes me want to cry just saying it. I hate saying it. And if Matt Milano walks, there are some potential options in filling his spot. And it's funny, again, we go to our note sheets. You've listed Levante David here. I love that option of potentially having Levante David. And we also got KJ Wright, Jayon Brown, Devondre Campbell. Let's run through some potential linebacker options if Matt Milano leaves and what we can do in free agency. Let's start with Levante David of the current NFC champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, you're about to see him play in the Super Bowl. They're actually a little bit nervous. I think he's nursing a hamstring injury to try to make it to the Super Bowl. Yeah. He's been, in my opinion, I think Fred Warner's kind of stepped into it now. He's been the best sideline-to-sideline linebacker in the NFL for a little while here. The Buccaneers have been great that whole time, so not everybody knows him to the degree they should. He's a free agent. I'm not 100% what kind of money he's going to get. Tampa Bay doesn't have a ton of cap space. They already have Devin White, so I think they're kind of planning for that. Being able to do that, he's older. He's 4 years older than Milano, so they're going into 27. He's going into his age 31 season. He's not going to get the number of years. He might not be way cheaper than Milano. So there may be a cost prohibitive element there. If money is the issue, guys like KJ Wright, Jayon Brown, Devondre Campbell are all coverage guys. They're all going to be more in that $6 to $8 million range instead of the $11 to $12 million range. So, and again, you can get creative with that first year cap hit. So some of those kind of things that you can go through to put it there. I think Levante David has shown this year he still has that elite athleticism to go sideline to sideline and do those things. We saw similar things from the other guys to a lesser degree. But I would like to see that role is important. So if we lose Milano, that becomes, like you said, the number one priority to fill. And if we do, those are some names we could look at.
I've loved Levante David since he came out of Nebraska. He's been I genuinely love him. I hate him now because he's on the Buccaneers, and I hate Brady, and I hate Brown, and I hate that whole team by extension. But Levante David, it's funny. I mentioned it because you had it in your notes. I was looking at Spot Track for the last couple of weeks, and then even more so in prep for this episode, and I was thinking like, man, Levante David being an unrestricted free agent. Spot Track as of now has him pegged at a 12.7 average annual value. I have him pegged at a 3-year, $38.142 million deal. That's only $1.1 million less in AAV than Matt Milano. He is 31. He is someone, though, if we were to sign Levante David, again, this is all hypotheticals, he would become our best linebacker. Even if we and making it up completely, like if we brought Milano back as well, Levante David is better than Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano right now. He is an all-pro 3-down linebacker who sideline to sideline coverage. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. Milano has been one of the best coverage linebackers in the league over the last 3 years, and especially 2018 to 2019. Number one from 2018 to 2019, both years, was Levante David. And you hit it on the head. He was doing great things in Tampa when it was just him and Quan Alexander, and the rest of that defense was terrible. Quan left. They drafted Devin White and then traded Quan this year. But David's been a great piece for them. If we were able to snag that somehow, I would love that. And it would be an upgrade, honestly, over Matt Milano, who's someone that is a legitimate piece in this defense. But again, he is going to probably be maybe a little too much out of our price range. We're not going to be able to break the bank on him. I like KJ Wright. I like Jayon Brown. KJ Wright, I think, is the forgotten guy in Seattle's defense because of Bobby Wagner and everything that he does. But Jayon Brown in Tennessee, fast, rangy. Devondre Campbell. I watched a lot of Cardinals games this year because I had Kyler Murray, and Campbell made a lot of plays, but you put on that Sunday night game against Seattle where Arizona won in OT, and he's making the plays in the backfield. He's making plays sideline to sideline on tunnel screens and just real rangy stuff. He's affordable. Also a name that I like, and maybe because I still have a crush on him since he came out of Miami, Denzel Perryman, free agent linebacker coming away from San Diego. I don't know if he's ready to handle a full 3-down workload, but if we did some kind of if we felt that we couldn't put all our eggs into one basket and we kind of piece some things together, I'd like to see him as an addition, but I see him more as a last-ditch effort. I think we have to get somebody who can holistically hold down the fort for all 3 downs and mirror Milano's snap count every game, which is anywhere from 98 to 100%.
Yeah, and I think Seth hits the nail on the head here. It would need to be that Milano got the Brinks truck backed up and somebody gave him 4 years, $60 million. And all of a sudden it was like, come on, man, we can't do that. And all of a sudden we got Levante David at 2 years, $24 million, just because somebody wasn't giving David the term that Milano was getting. I agree that if it's going to get to that point, it's because we can't afford it and that it probably goes the other direction. But it's still a name that's out there, and that is who Milano is competing for on the open market. They're the 2 best available linebackers, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point too. Yeah, if we're going to pay David that, we might as well pay Milano that, but maybe someone decides to pay, Milano a gajillion dollars, and then it's like, well, we were going to give this to Milano, but he got way more, so here you go, Levante David. Yeah. That would be pretty cool and not a bad situation. As we leave the linebacker grouping, seeing some comments in the chat about cornerback. That's where we're going next. We're looking at that cornerback position, and we've eyed up, for the sake of this conversation, Richard Sherman, Xavier Rhodes, and Jason Verrett of the San Francisco 49ers. All, in theory, should be affordable. Sherman's probably going to be the most expensive, but his scheme fit and design in the Bills' defense is something that's obviously very attractive.
Yeah, so obviously the Bills have shown a desire to have a veteran in the room every year, and they've done it each year. Some have gone pretty well. I think Josh Norman played decently this year. I don't think he was great, but I don't think he was the liability some people concerned that he would be. I thought he played okay. Other years, less so. EJ Gaines had a very nice season in the year he did play. And obviously everybody remembers the Levante Davis stretch. As we go through there, I think that we're going to see, obviously, Levi Wallace is an easy one. We're bringing him back on a restricted free agent. Yeah. We have Dane Jackson, who I think everybody wants to see compete in training camp. And I think we bring in a guy as the veteran in the room. Some of the numbers I've seen thrown around were a little confusing at some of the projections I've seen for some of the guys. So I think that they're looking to bring in a guy on a like value type deal, similar to Norman, that maybe somewhere $4, $5, $6 million. We're not looking to spend a bunch of money here, but we're looking to have
low risk.
Yeah, somebody in there that can do it. Maybe that doesn't even guarantee until you make the roster, in case Dane Jackson has some amazing camp and they're like, hey, listen, Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace is fine as cornerback too. So I kind of like the idea of what a Richard Sherman can bring to the locker room and to that veteran presence in the cornerback room. Xavier Rhodes is slightly different, but Jason Verrett's the value guy that really intrigues me, that I think could be really good in that spot. And that, he's always that guy when healthy, he's really good. And that comes up a lot. And he did play healthy for San Francisco this year. But he got back to that level that he's the guy that I would target with the best value out of that group, because I think we could snag him for like $5 million.
I second that. He was my number one pick out of the guys we listed here. Going into that, this number will always stick in my head. Doing the prep for the Bills 49ers game, going into that game, Verrett was the 14th highest graded corner in coverage in the entire NFL that year. He was having a phenomenal year, and when healthy, he's a very good player. And if we're rotating him in and he's not playing a ton of snaps, a la kind of like an EJ Gaines type of thing, I think that's a phenomenal ad. And it also hits another need on the defense, as Lone Wolf mentioned here. Don't you think we need a little more speed at cornerback too? I do think that at the end of the day, we need to build this team to start to contend a little more with the Kansas City Chiefs and beat them. And I don't want to add more. As much as I love technique and value it, I would like to add a little more speed. And out of the corners we've mentioned and ones on the market, Verrett is arguably the fastest. He has good long distance speed and short-term quickness and agility. He's someone who could function well in a lot of coverage aspects. He would be my top as well. I like him a lot. And we're going to stay in the secondary, look at some safety nickel options. We've got some intriguing names. We've got Keanu Neal of the Atlanta Falcons. We've got Jaquiski Tartt, who's a very fun name to say. I would like him to be on the
maybe the best name in the NFL, for being honest. Jaquiski Tartt is a phenomenal name.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting better than that anywhere. No one's beating that. And then Xavier Woods functioning at that same level. What are your thoughts here for adding depth at that safety nickel piece?
This is really just a play on how much do they think they missed on that Kyler Duggar pick.
Jeremy Chin as well.
And do they really want that big nickel? They saw what Kansas City did to the Bills in that game, where they were basically running dime the whole game with 6 DBs, but a lot of versatile, movable pieces that are kind of safety, kind of linebacker, kind of corner. So that's the names I looked at here. That's what those guys are. They can be in there and play more in a versatile role, not your true slot corner like a Taron Johnson is, but a third safety look, basically a better Dean Marlowe. Is that what they want? Do they want that piece? So I have no idea if that's where it's going to go. You do see Melifanu brought up a lot out of Syracuse. He's the guy in the draft that would probably fit there. You also hear, talking about some of the names. So we're talking about Jaquiski. Apparently, in order to be a versatile secondary linebacker, the name has to go. So Jaquiski Tartt, Obi, or the brother of Melifanu, and then also Hamza Nasruddin out of Florida State.
Nathan just commented on it. Yep.
3 ridiculous names. So Hamza Nasruddin, Jaquiski Tartt, and Obi Melifanu. You're talking about some phenomenal name value, along with being a versatile chess piece to move around in that big nickel third safety dime look that we could play around with. And that's something that I think is intriguing.
Yeah, I agree. Just from the perspective of, if you believe the reports and how much they loved Kyle Duggar and that Duggar was going to be the pick if he was there instead of Epinesa, it makes you think like, okay, what do they value at that big nickel spot? What are they looking for in the defense? What are they trying to do? And with what Neal, Tart, and Woods potentially can offer, and also those draft options as well, like it's a really intriguing position. I love Nasruddin and what he offers. Oh man, Jeremy Chin was my guy last year that I had a huge love affair with as we got closer to the draft, and I still like the Epinesa pick, but that big nickel I think is something that would do really well in this Bills defense. It's one of the reasons my ideal guy that falls in the first round, especially if we were to lose Milano, but even if I thought we were going to keep him, Koromoa from Notre Dame, just that range and his ability to blitz, linebacker, safety, nickel kind of hybrid things, what he can do. It's an intriguing position and one to keep an eye on. And as we move from that, we look towards free agent offensive linemen, and we've got just one we've highlighted here who I like a lot from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Alejandro Villanueva, which is also kind of a fun name. I think a little more, modern and contemporary, but also a fun name. Did really well at Pittsburgh. Great leadership. You probably saw him in all those, I think it was like AARP commercials for the NFL, military, and everything that he was doing, and really high character guy.
Former Army Ranger.
Yes, former Army Ranger, and great leadership, hardworking, basically checks all those boxes of like what a character guy would be in the Bills team. And he's also good when he's on the field and was an anchor for Pittsburgh when healthy.
Yeah, so he's a guy that, if we were to lose out on Daryl Williams, he's the kind of guy that I think you would bring in and maybe combine with a second or third or fourth round pick. And you would, because, Villanueva is going to be 33. You're not looking at him as a long-term deal, but I think he's more suited to play than Ty Nsekhe was. Where Nsekhe, I think there was some concern with him getting a high snap count. I think Villanueva could come in and play a full season and be good and be right there. Yes. So I think that's the kind of guy that you would pair with maybe an athletic upside project type pick in the second or third round at tackle. You let them groom and develop because you have Villanueva starting. And we got outbid for Daryl Williams. He's kind of the fallback guy. There's some other names that you see out there. J.R. Sweezy is a guy that if we lost out on, John Feliciano, I could see him coming in. I don't know what Alex Mack has left in the tank, but maybe he'd be interested in playing some guard. Lane Taylor out of Green Bay. There's a handful of guys that are aging veterans that are there, but really there's a high-end top level in free agency with Brandon Scherf, Joe Thuney, guys like that. And then there's a pretty big drop-off to the next level of guys, and I'm just not sure who's going to break the bank with some of those different players that are out there. I think Cam Robinson probably gets re-signed by the Jags, but maybe even franchise tagged. So we'll see where those things go. But the one that stuck out to me for a fit in the locker room, and you talk about a guy that, Coach McDermott would love the first day, Alejandro Villanueva is a guy that I could see.
Yeah, I love that. I love the year that Daryl Williams had, but my want last year in free agency, you mentioned him earlier, I really wanted Brian Bulaga, and I loved the deal that he signed with the Chargers, and I like adding that veteran stability at the tackle positions. I'm all for drafting young offensive talent, but at the tackle position, I want something a little more known and a proven commodity, especially with the quarterback franchise that we have with Josh Allen, and I love the idea of taking someone like Villanueva, who at this point is serviceable, is like the very basement level of the floor. He is still a quality lineman, and getting him, allowing a younger guy that we would take in the second or third or fourth to groom a little bit and get ready, I think that's a tremendous option. And we move towards the tight ends, which is another position of much contention for Bills Mafia this year. There's a lot of and especially if the vertical threat that is Lee Smith potentially leaves the Bills, that opens up some passing options there. And there's some names on the tight end pool, especially if you play fantasy football, a lot of them. And the three we've highlighted here, you had in your notes, I had it ironically in mine as well. I had one above the other just because of realistic in terms of who we could get. But we've got Hunter Henry from the Chargers. We've got Jonnu Smith from the Titans and Gerald Everett from the Rams. Now, Hunter Henry is obviously what in my opinion, and probably yours as well, is the best fit and is a tremendous piece, but he's just going to be too expensive with what he's going to command. Spot Track has him getting about 10.9 in his average annual value, which would pay him as a top 3 tight end in the NFL. I just don't think we have the money to play.
I think he gets the Austin Hooper deal. I think he gets that 4-year, $40 million, 4-year, $44 million deal, and I think he deserves it. I'm excited to see where he goes, but I don't think we're in that level.
Me neither. And Cole has taken a peek into our notes here somehow and has peered in. Jonnu Smith, that value, he is he's the baby bear in this Goldilocks scenario, because Greg, in your notes here, you have that Jonnu Smith is just right at what he could be in terms of his fit, his ability, what the contract he could command looks like. He would be a really solid get in terms of what he can do on the field, and I think he's a reasonable add considering the contract that he's going to command.
So you talk about a guy that I was obsessed with previously, who also was a one-time Titans tight end, Delanie Walker. I thought that he was the perfect movable chess piece for this team, that we could move him around to different spots. He could actually almost play some fullback sometimes, go out of the backfield. He could be in line as a blocker. You could split him out in the slot. I think Jonnu Smith has that kind of ability. And if you look, some people play with the web on Mock Draftable that shows like where he matches up. You know, some of the players that he matches up with, the number one match is TJ Hawkinson. And that he is just so much more athletic and explosive than people realize. He ran a 4.6 in the 40, 38-inch vertical, 127-inch broad jump, super athletic. And I think he's been kind of hidden in a very run-centric Titans offense. Yeah. I think he would be very intrigued to sign up with a guy like Josh Allen to unlock his offensive ability as a receiver, but he's also a phenomenal blocker. And I think that he allows Dawson Knox to slot in as the nice option as a tight end too, rather than being leaned on as that number one option. And now all of a sudden we have the option to run 12 personnel, where we can now run 2 tight, but when the 2 tight ends are Jonnu Smith and Dawson Knox, you can still pass out of that all day. So being in that kind of position opens up options in the run game. Honestly, my number one target in all of free agency is Jonnu Smith. More than any other position, everything we have, the one player, if I could go after anyone in free agency, I think we can cobble enough together with what we have on the team, what we can do in the draft, different things like that. My number one target of any player available in free agency is Jonnu Smith. And he would be the guy that I think really unlocks a piece in this offense that we haven't seen, gives versatility to be able to be better at running the ball without sacrificing anything in passing the ball. And I think he could have a phenomenal season with Josh Allen.
I like that, knowing that he's your number one priority. He's somebody who I think is the Delanie Walker comp is really tremendous. Someone who, the Niners just dominated with those 2 tight end sets with Vernon Davis and Delanie Walker, and then they couldn't pay Delanie. He went to Tennessee and was really one of the most versatile matchups.
I wanted him so bad that year when he signed with Tennessee.
Dude, and what I like about it and what Delanie did and what Jonnu Smith can do, again, not to harken it back, Eric and I talked about it when we talked about some running back needs and getting guys that can create mismatches. And Jonnu Smith is a mismatch. You have a tight end who can make like 60-yard house calls if he catches an out and breaks a tackle and can take it up the sideline. And when we talk about mismatches and dynamics and how people fit, having that kind of speed and athleticism at the tight end position is a mismatch nightmare in coverage. But to your point, the fact that you're not really losing anything in terms of your blocking, I mean, that's tremendous. Like, I'm not saying that Jonnu Smith is Rob Gronkowski, and even though I can't stand Rob Gronkowski for a multitude of reasons, for as much as Gronk was this monster in the receiving game, he was such a quality inline blocker. Same thing with Tony Gonzalez. Like, the ability to seal the edge and make reads and be sound fundamentally in your technique makes you such a big weapon. And as we look to try and solidify some things in the run game, but also get more athletic and fast on the offense, Jonnu Smith is someone who really checks that box. I like that he's your number one. So if you could only have one move guaranteed, Jonnu Smith's your guy for this offseason.
For an ad, obviously I don't know that I'd put him above, re-signing Milano or Daryl Williams or something like that. But yeah, if you give me a shot that I get to add one other piece, I think we could do other things in the draft. I think tight end takes a while to develop. You don't see a ton of explosive rookie tight ends coming out. It takes a little while to be able to make an impact there. So I'm fine if we draft it. And don't get me wrong, if I thought Kyle Pitts was going to fall to pick 30, sure, that'd be fun. I don't anticipate that Kyle Pitts is falling to pick 30. So beyond that, I don't think there's any other generational talents at tight end in this draft. There's other good guys. I know people like Freiermuth and people like that are, I'm sure will end up being fine. They're not coming in and lighting the league on fire as rookies. So if I have my shot, he'd be my one chip to play.
Yeah, I like the potential of Gerald Everett as well and the downfield threat that he offers. I like what he's done in the Rams offense, but I think there's a little wanting there in terms of his run block, whereas you don't have that with Jonnu Smith. And again, 1,000% endorse what you said. If I knew Kyle Pitts could fall, he's my guy regardless because of his ability and his mismatch potential. But we're calling him out for a reason, and so is the world. I don't think he's going to last until 30.
I don't think it's crazy that he goes top 10.
No, I don't either. I think he's somebody who is just so unique and so versatile. We haven't seen a receiving threat at that tight end position. Again, you say it all the time with receiving tight ends, but he's basically just like a big wide receiver who can block and just has monstrous size.
And is legitimately willing blocker, like legitimately. Yes. And I think people see what Travis Kelce unlocks in that offense. I think someone's going to rightfully pick Kyle Pitts early and have a field day with it.
I like the mock drafts that have put him to San Francisco because the idea of having him and George Kittle in the same offense sounds like the coolest thing ever, especially for Mike Shanahan and what he wants.
I would just run 12 every single day, and you lose nothing in passing. You'd be able to pass out of that every single day and maul people running the ball.
Yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'm going super simple. We're doing zone looks every time. We're either running it or we're just doing play action, and it's probably going to work like 60% of the time because of that 12 personnel. It would be monstrous. And so that's the tight end position. We're going to wrap up here as we start to wind down on this episode of Disguise Coverage on the salary cap special for the Buffalo Bills. Looking at defensive tackle, Star Lotulelei comes back this year. We've outlined some other things in terms of what happens with Vernon Butler and what the room could look like with Ed and Starr and Harrison Phillips and Zimmer. But there are some free agent options, including a man that a lot of Bills Mafia was clamoring for at the trade deadline, Mr. Dalvin Tomlinson from the New York Giants. But there's also some other intriguing options. We've got Shelby Harris from Denver, who missed 2020 with a knee injury. We've got Jonathan Hankins from the Raiders. There are some potential options. Obviously, Dalvin would be the best option there in terms of the pure role that he fills, and he can be more of an every down, take care of everything, whereas Harris and Hankins are more rotational fill in and get some above average play and also some depth pieces. But if we could get Tomlinson, that would be tremendous.
So this one's more as a just in case that it doesn't work out with Starr.
Which is a realistic thing that could potentially happen.
Sadly, for anyone who's aware, we talked about this earlier. People I think we're talking about it in the chat. Retire is not a word that exists in the CBA or in salary cap contract language. If Star Lotulelei does not come back from opting out from COVID, the Bills are SOL. There is no benefit whatsoever. We are going to pay Star Lotulelei the same amount of money if he doesn't play as if he does play. There is no benefit whatsoever to releasing him. As a matter of fact, we would almost be better to tell him, don't tell anyone you retired. Let us just make you inactive every day. Because cutting him actually loses $4 million more than just keeping him on the roster. It's $7 million to have him on the roster. It's $11.8 million to cut him. If that happens, so one, please, God, be healthy and okay, Star Lotulelei. We need you. Hopefully, he comes back and plays. If he doesn't, if something happens, those are options where we would have to figure out a way. We need a one tech. We absolutely need it. We need Starr to come back and still be able to do that role at 31 years old, and be that, block eating guy on rundowns and then be able to go back and go through there. So some of those options would be really, really painful. But if we needed to, those are alternatives to that more so than anyone we would add in addition. My favorite is having Tyler Shelvin mentor under an apprentice under Star Lotulelei for 1 year, that you draft him in the second or third round, and then we use that to mentor under Star Lotulelei, and then have a monster 6'3", 360-pound, just massive human at nose tackle, and then Ed Oliver will be his best self next to a guy like Tyler Shelvin.
Oh man, I wasn't expecting 3 or 4 Tyler Shelvin name drops on this episode. I was not expecting it, but yeah.
So if Jonnu Smith is my favorite free agent crush, Tyler Shelvin is my draft crush right now. That's the guy that I want.
That's fair. Yeah, but I think even just speaking about Star and the potential of Shelvin or Tomlinson in general, you hit it on the head again. The importance of the one tech, and I think we learned this year that raw stats for Star Lotulelei aren't necessarily the most important thing. How many tackles and sacks that he has, it's nice when he gets them, but it's not really his most important function. Him just being able to eat up blockers and allow Ed Oliver to have one-on-one matchups and allow Tremaine or whatever other linebackers in there to roam a bit freer and not have to fight through trash. It's an important position in this defense. And Star was someone who a lot of people over the years were saying that we were overpaying for him and we weren't seeing that return on investment. But I think everyone and their mother saw this year what the defense looks like without a one tech like Star Lotulelei. And if he decides not to come back, I'm worried. I would be scared. We need to fill that hole. That might be like if Star were to not come back and we lost Milano, that one tech, that might trump my replacement for Milano as my number one priority for the offseason, just because I don't think we can go another year without having a one tech like that. Oof.
Yeah, it's it would become a major issue. I haven't heard anything reported on that. Obviously, we're hoping for the best, and that Star comes back rejuvenated from a year off and ready to ball out. But we'll find out together.
We will find out together, and starting to wind down now and wrap up. That's why the Toodles you guys is up there. We've run for almost 2 hours here on this episode of Disguise Coverage, which is quite long. But I mean, I think it also is reflective of the importance of what this salary cap is. It's the reason you and I came together for this episode and doing the salary cap special. I think it's a thing that people know of, but not a lot of people understand the ins and outs and the intricacies and how it can be affected and what it does. And especially in a season like this where it's significantly reduced and it impacts everyone on some scale, it's important to get that across. And yeah, I appreciate you coming by. Greg, as always, you are, as many people have said, you're potential GM level. You're our capologist. You're phenomenal in every way. And people have been coming in with the compliments here, like Cole, incredible show today. Oh, Michael, thank you so much. He said Toodles. That was fantastic. And another comment to thank you guys for the hard work. And Greg, I want to thank you for, again, coming on. You were fantastic as always, I guess, kind of, maybe. Yeah, and although I think pretty much everyone knows who you are and where to find you now, just to be safe, just to, cross the T's and dot the I's, why don't you let everybody know who you are, where they can find you, and why you like long moonlit walks on the beach.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Appreciate coming on and being able to talk through this. And I knew this was the right forum to be able to kind of lay out all this detail. So it was a long show. There's a lot of information here, but hopefully you guys took away a lot from the alternatives and options that the Bills have. There's a lot of ways to be able to do this in a much more creative way than what you see thrown out on Twitter. So hopefully we'll chop up some of this into some videograms to send out to you guys. You guys will be able to see some bits and pieces of it. But come and find me at Greg Tompsett. We'll be doing our season review shows with Aaron and I the next couple of weeks. And then we'll be diving into some of our targets and favorite players to look for as we get ready for free agency, and be right there alongside you guys as we see who gets re-signed, who gets added, and how we make this team even better going into 2021.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And yeah, you hit it right on the head to kind of send us off. It's a dire situation, and there are some tough things, but it can be navigated. These are waters that can be navigated, and Brandon Beane is very adept at that. And I think as we go forward, we really wanted everybody to just understand the options that we have and the way we can move forward in this team and what the offseason is going to look like. And make sure you're following Greg on Twitter. His content is absolutely phenomenal. And one thing I wanted to mention here, I appreciate everyone. All the engagement in the chat was fantastic. And I wish, honestly, we could have just sat here for 2 hours and answered every single question that came through in the chat, because there were so many good ones and we just couldn't get to everything. If we didn't get to one of your questions or thoughts or comments, tweet at Greg, tweet at myself. You can find me on Twitter at @pro__ant. Greg and I are very active on the old Twitterverse, on the old webs. So tweet at us, questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, give follows while you're out there. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguise Coverage, to the Cover One Buffalo podcast with Greg and Aaron. Follow the whole Cover One team. I bang the drum for this all the time, and people probably think I'm biased because I'm part of Cover One, but I think we have the best team when it comes to content creation and analysis and breakdowns of anything and everything pertaining to the Buffalo Bills and football just in general. We've got you covered in so many different ways. There's multiple avenues on the team. That's my little spiel for that. Again, massive thank you to Greg. I wanted to do this episode, and I couldn't have done it without you. I appreciate you coming on, and yeah, no doubt. You deserve it. You're fantastic. Thank you for coming by. Thank you to everybody who watched it live with us, who commented, who engaged. Thank you to everybody who's watching it later, listening on the podcast apps and platforms and whatever. See all the comments coming in. Cover One is the best. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate you all, you guys. We will see you next week. And as always, stay safe and go Bills.